There are nights when the heart is still like a quiet lake, and there are days when the mind stirs like restless waves, though we cannot say why. Amid the noise of the world, we seek a place to pause, not to escape, but to listen to that gentle whisper within. In the fragile silence between two breaths, perhaps we may begin to see the answers we seek have never been outside of us, but resting softly in the stillness of our own heart. Each story here is a mirror reflecting unseen corners of our being. A slow breath, a small return to what we truly are. Sit quietly, inhale deeply. Let the mind drift into the rhythm of the tale. Story: The mirror beneath the stream. Deep in a quiet forest stood a small temple by a clear, flowing stream. The water was so pure that clouds and faces alike could be seen upon its surface. One day, a weary traveler arrived. His eyes were heavy with questions that had no answers. He bowed before the old monk and said, "Master, I have wandered far, seeking one thing. How can I truly see myself?" The monk gestured toward the stream. "Look into the water." The traveler leaned over. The current rippled, distorting his reflection into wavering shapes. He said, "I see myself, but I look broken." "Because you look while the water moves," the monk replied. He then took a small silver mirror from his sleeve and placed it gently upon the surface. It floated, trembling, catching the sunlight. "What do you see now?" He said, "I see the sky, the trees, and me, but everything is still unclear." The monk nodded. "That mirror is your mind. When your mind drifts with the stream of life, everything you see becomes but a shimmer. You think you see the truth, yet it's only a dream." "So what must I do?" asked the traveler. "Don't try to still the water, and don't cling to the mirror. Simply watch until you see the one who is watching." The traveler sat by the stream in silence. The water kept flowing, the wind kept whispering, yet slowly something within him softened, like clouds parting. He realized what he sought was never hidden in the reflection. It was in the stillness that saw. He smiled, bowed, and left without taking the mirror, without taking any answers. Only a quietness followed him, deeper than all the words he had sought. They say that even now the stream still flows, and the mirror rests somewhere beneath its ripples. Those who come and wait long enough may glimpse not their own face, but the calm awareness that gazes back. Story: The dust on the altar. Every morning, a young novice cleaned the Buddha altar until it shone like polished gold. One day, the abbot passed by and asked, "Are you wiping dust from the table or from your mind?" The boy blinked. "I'm cleaning the table, master." The monk smiled. "If you only clean the table, the dust will return tomorrow. But if your heart is clean, even when dust covers everything, the light will still be there." From that day on, the boy still cleaned, but each time his hand touched the statue, he breathed slowly, smiling. And one morning, he realized he was no longer cleaning, he was simply watching the light that had never been clouded. Story: The Seeker of Echoes. A traveler climbed a high mountain and shouted, "Is there anyone there?" The echo replied, "No one. One." Angrily he yelled, "You fool!" And the mountain answered, "Fool! Fool!" He stood silently for a long while, then softly said, "Thank you." And the echo whispered back, "You, you." He laughed then, realizing the echo never hurts, it only returns what we send out. When he left the mountain, he no longer sought the echo, for he knew the whole world was one vast echo of the heart. Story: The Candle That Never Burned. A man brought a large candle to the altar. He said, "Master, I offer this candle so that Buddha's light may shine upon my life." The monk smiled gently. "Then light it, my son." He looked around. "There's no flame, master." The monk replied, "Because the true candle doesn't burn. The light you seek doesn't come from wax or wick. It rises from awakening within you." The man bowed his head in silence, and in that very still moment, something wordless began to glow, a light that needed no flame at all. Story: The One Who Listened to the Leaves. On a small hill, there lived an old man alone in a wooden house. Every morning, he sat on the porch, listening to the wind passing through the trees. People asked him, "What do you hear in those leaves, old man, that keeps you sitting there all day?" He simply smiled and said, "I hear life breathing." One day, a young man came from the city. He was burdened with confusion, work, ambition, love, all tangled in his mind. Seeking peace, he asked the old man, "I've tried to meditate, to read books, to calm my thoughts, but my heart is still noisy. How do you find peace in something as simple as the sound of leaves?" The old man didn't answer. He placed a small wooden stool beside him and said, "Sit, listen with me." The young man sat down. At first, all he could hear was noise, wind, insects, and the restless beating of his own heart. But slowly, he began to notice the details. Dry leaves had a brittle sound. Green leaves whispered softly. Gentle winds sang differently from the strong. And then something shifted. All the sounds began to blend, not separate, not distinct, just one living rhythm. He felt his mind soften, his breath deepen. The old man spoke. When the mind stops naming, everything becomes one. To hear the leaves is to hear your own heart. When the heart is still, even the wind becomes silent. The young man left the hill that day, carrying not the sound of the leaves, but the silence within himself. Story: The Shadow on the Wall. In an ancient temple, there was a small room known as the Shadow Room. Every afternoon, sunlight streamed through the window, and the shadow of the Buddha statue appeared on the wall, smiling gently. A young novice loved sitting there every day. He said the shadow comforted him like a living presence of the Buddha. Then one week, rain fell endlessly. The sky was dark, and no light entered the room. The wall became bare and gray. The boy cried, "The Buddha is gone!" The abbot heard him and came quietly. He asked, "Are you sure the Buddha is gone?" The boy sniffled, "I can't see him anymore." The abbot smiled. "The Buddha never lived on that wall, my child. The sunlight only helped you see what was already inside you. Even when the clouds cover the sky, The sun is still there, and so is he. The boy looked at the empty wall, then lowered his head, whispering, "The Buddha never left." The next day, when the sun returned, the boy didn't rush to the shadow room anymore. He sat quietly in the courtyard, watching light shimmer through the leaves, and there too he saw the Buddha smiling. Story: The Wind Gatherer. At the edge of a quiet valley, villagers often saw a strange young woman walking across the fields with an empty jar. When asked what she was doing, she replied, "I'm gathering the wind." They laughed. "How can anyone gather the wind?" She smiled and said nothing. One day, a curious little boy followed her. When the wind blew, she raised the jar gently, tilting it as if catching something invisible. Then she sealed the lid and said, "There, I've captured the wind." The boy looked inside. It was empty. She said softly, "Don't look with your eyes. Listen with your heart. When you are truly still, you will hear the wind resting inside your stillness." Years passed and the woman disappeared, but the villagers kept her jar in a small temple by the river. They say if you press your ear close and remain absolutely silent, you can still hear a faint whisper, like the breath of the ancient wind that never stopped blowing. Story: The Drop on the Lotus Leaf. After a heavy rain, a young novice saw a raindrop resting perfectly on a lotus leaf. It shimmered like a jewel. He asked his master, "Why doesn't the water soak into the leaf, master?" The monk replied, "Because the lotus leaf doesn't cling to the water. It welcomes every drop of rain, but keeps none for itself." The boy asked, "Can a person be like that, master?" The monk smiled. "Yes. When you can touch every emotion without being drowned by it, when you can love without holding and let go without hatred, then you are like the lotus leaf, untouched and pure in the stream of life." The boy watched as the droplet rolled off and vanished into the earth, leaving the leaf fresh and serene. He whispered, "Perhaps the lotus leaf is meditating too." Story: The Lamp Beneath the Sea. Long ago, an old diver lived by the shore. He told a legend of a lamp burning forever at the bottom of the sea, a light to guide lost souls home. A young man, drawn by the tale, decided to find it. He dove into the deep with torches, lamps, even electric lights. But the deeper he went, the darker it became. Every flame was swallowed by the sea. Only the sound of his breathing remained. At the ocean floor, in total darkness, he felt despair. Then, he stopped struggling. He closed his eyes and simply breathed. In that stillness, a soft glow appeared, not from any lamp, but from within his own chest. When he rose back to the surface, he laughed, quietly, peacefully. He finally understood. The lamp beneath the sea was never hidden in the ocean's depths. It had always been shining in the depths of a silent heart. Story: The Man Who Tried to Outrun His Shadow. Long ago, there was a peculiar man who believed his shadow was the cause of all his suffering. Every morning, he ran across the village fields, hoping to leave it behind. He sprinted through grass, down dusty roads, over wooden bridges, But the shadow followed him everywhere, stretching and shrinking beneath the sun. He climbed hills, panting heavily. His shadow climbed with him. He jumped into the river, watching it dissolve, but once he emerged on the bank, there it stood again. One day, he met a Zen teacher meditating beneath a tree. The man cried out, "Master, how do I escape this shadow that has haunted me my entire life?" The master slowly opened his eyes and pointed to the shade under the tree. "Step into the shadow here." The man obeyed. Suddenly, his own shadow disappeared. He gasped, "Master, it's gone!" The teacher smiled gently. "You cannot outrun your shadow. As long as you flee from your own darkness, it will chase you endlessly. But when you step into a softer light, when you embrace yourself with gentleness, your darkness calms and loses its power." The master added, "The parts of yourself you fear do not vanish by force. They soften through acceptance." And for the first time in his life, the man felt no fear toward his own shadow. Story: The Log That Learned to Cry. In a peaceful village lived an old woodcarver. People cherished his work because every piece he crafted brought a sense of quiet comfort to the heart. One day, he found a large fallen log deep in the forest. He brought it home and spent days carving it. But each time his chisel touched the wood, the sound echoed like a soft sob. His apprentice asked, "Master, why do you stop? What do you hear?" The old man replied, "This wood is crying." The boy trembled. Why would a piece of wood cry? The master laid a gentle hand on the log. It was split by storms, struck by lightning, soaked by rain. It carries the wounds of an entire lifetime. The boy whispered, "Then why do you still use it?" "Because its sorrow is what makes it beautiful," he said. "Pain is the soil where gentleness grows." After that, the master no longer carved forcefully. He sat with the log each evening, listening, as if the log carried a long-forgotten story that needed to be heard. A month later, he carved from it a wooden Buddha so graceful and compassionate that villagers from nearby towns came to see it. Their hearts softened just by gazing upon it, as if an unseen hand touched the wounds they hid inside. The apprentice asked, "How did you create such a divine statue?" The old man smiled. "I didn't carve it. I simply helped the wood express its sorrow. When pain is understood, it naturally transforms into wisdom." Story: The Lake That Was Not a Lake. High atop a mountain lay a mysterious lake. Travelers said that no matter how clear the water was, no one could ever see their reflection in it. They saw the sky. They saw the drifting clouds. They saw the tall green pines, but never themselves. One traveler, puzzled by this, approached the monk who tended the lake. "Master," he asked, "why can I see everything except myself?" The monk replied, "This lake reflects only what is here in the present moment. It does not reflect the images you carry about yourself, your fears, your pride, your judgments." The traveler frowned. "But I want to see me." "You want to see the version of you created by your mind, not the one that truly exists."
The true mirror for seeing yourself is not in water, but in a quiet mind. The monk stood and added, "When your mind is still, you will see yourself clearly. When it is disturbed, you will see only illusions." That night, the traveler sat beside the lake. The winds died. The water calmed into a perfect stillness. He leaned forward to look, and for the first time, he did not merely see a face, but the part of himself he had been avoiding all his life. Story: The Man Who Carried the Wind. A man often walked through a village carrying a large woven basket on his back. People assumed he was transporting rice, firewood, or stones. One day, a curious child lifted the lid and saw nothing inside, only emptiness. "Sir," the child asked, "why do you carry an empty basket?" The man chuckled, "I am carrying the wind." The child laughed. "How can you carry wind?" "I use this basket to hold the things I no longer want to carry in my heart. Harsh words, old memories, unspoken sadness. I place them inside and let the wind take them away." The child blinked, thinking hard. "But why not throw the basket away too?" The man smiled kindly. "Because every day I still have something to release. No one lives with an empty back. What matters is knowing where to put the heaviness." The child picked up a small stone, a stone he had kept out of anger toward a friend, and gently placed it into the man's basket. A breeze passed. The stone disappeared. The child's face brightened. For the first time, his heart felt as light as the wind. Story: The Candle Waiting for Darkness. There once was a lonely candle who felt unimportant. Whenever night fell and someone lit its flame, people would gather around it with warm, grateful eyes. But as soon as dawn arrived, they placed the candle back into a dark corner and forgot about it. The candle whispered to an oil lamp, "I wish the night would never end. Only in the dark do I have meaning." The oil lamp flickered and asked, "Why do you wish for endless darkness?" The candle said sadly, "Because when other lights appear, I become useless." The oil lamp laughed softly. "You misunderstand. Your light does not exist to defeat darkness. It exists to ease the fear in someone's heart." The candle hesitated. "And when they no longer need my light?" The lamp glowed warmly. "Then you have fulfilled your greatest purpose. The highest form of light is to help someone see, not to remain forever." That night, when the candle was lit again, its flame burned slowly, gently. No longer trying to be the brightest, it simply wished to guide a single person through a small patch of darkness. And when its flame finally melted into silence, the candle felt peaceful, knowing it had lived with meaning.
Story: The River That Remembered Silence. There was once a young healer named Lin, who lived in a village bordered by a river that never stopped speaking. Even late at night, the water murmured against rocks, whispered across sand, and hummed beneath bridges. Travelers said the river carried memories of centuries past, echoing the voices of monks who once meditated along its banks. But Lin did not hear wisdom in the river's voice. She heard only noise, constant, restless noise. Her days were filled with people seeking cures, herbs for fever, teas for fatigue, oils for aching legs. Their worries were poured into her small wooden house until she began to feel as though she were carrying the entire village on her back. One evening, exhausted and unable to sleep, Lin walked to the river. "What do you want from me?" she muttered at the water. The river continued its endless whispering. In irritation, she picked up a handful of stones and threw them in, shouting, "Be quiet, just once!" To her shock, the river obeyed. The surface stilled, the ripples faded, and for the first time in her life, the river became silent. The silence was so deep, so complete, that Lin felt her breath catch. Yet, instead of comfort, she felt fear. The world seemed to stop. Then, slowly, she heard something else. Her own heartbeat. Then, the sound of air passing through her nose. Then, the subtle vibration beneath her ribs. All the sounds she had ignored for years now returned to her. A soft voice rose from the river, not in words, but in understanding. The silence itself spoke. "Child, I was never the noise. I was only a mirror for the noise within you." Lin collapsed to her knees, trembling. All this time, she had blamed the world for her exhaustion, the people, the responsibilities, the river, the noise. But the noise was not outside. It was inside her own mind. Unexpressed emotions, unprocessed pain, unanswered questions. She whispered, "Teach me." The river resumed its gentle sound, but something had changed. It no longer overwhelmed her. It soothed her. Lin spent every dawn beside the water, not asking questions, not seeking silence, but listening, truly listening. She learned that the river spoke in patterns. The deeper the sound, the deeper the lesson. When people came to her with their worries, she no longer carried them alone. She listened with the river's patience, healed with the river's gentleness, and spoke with the river's clarity. Years later, when travelers asked her for the secret of her calmness, Lin would simply smile and say, "When the river went silent, I learned to hear myself." Story: The Monk Who Followed a Shadow. There was an elderly monk named Sora who lived high in the mountains where clouds brushed the tops of pine trees. Sora had one peculiar habit. Every sunrise, he would follow his own shadow. He would wander the monastery courtyard, eyes fixed on the dark shape stretching before him. Young monks found it strange. One asked him, "Master, why do you chase something that always moves away?" Sora only smiled, saying, "In this shadow, I see truth." But no one understood. One cold morning, Sora's shadow stretched longer than usual. As he followed it, the younger monks secretly trailed behind him, hiding behind pillars and bushes. For hours, Sora walked across stone paths, through bamboo groves, up a narrow trail. At last, he stopped at a cliff overlooking a deep valley filled with mist. His shadow stopped too. He sat down. "Come out," he said gently. The younger monks sheepishly revealed themselves. One asked, "Master, what are you really looking for?" Sora pointed to the shadow, resting quietly beside him. "This is everything I denied, avoided, or abandoned." He continued, "When I was young, I chased enlightenment.
I believed purity meant removing all darkness from myself. But the more I ran from my shadow, the larger it grew. The monks listened, breath held. Then one day, Sora said, I realized enlightenment is not light without darkness. Enlightenment is the lamp that allows you to see both. A breeze rustled the pines. Sora placed his hand over his heart. Your anger, your fear, your mistakes, these are shadows. They follow you not to torment you, but to teach you. When you walk toward the sun, your shadow falls behind. When you turn away from the sun, your shadow leads you. Either way, it stays with you. A young monk asked, So what should we do with our shadows? Sora closed his eyes. Sit with them. Listen to them. Understand them. One day, you will discover your shadow is only the part of you waiting to be loved. The monks bowed. That evening, dozens of shadows stretched across the courtyard, and for the first time, the young monks looked at them, not with fear, but with tenderness.
Story: The Garden of Unfinished Voices. In a quiet village, surrounded by mountains, there was a secret garden known only to a few. The Garden of Unfinished Voices. The garden keeper, an old woman named Mira, welcomed visitors who carried unsaid words, apologies they never voiced, gratitude left unspoken, dreams they abandoned, confessions they feared to make. Plant your unfinished voice, Mira would say. Everyone who entered received a single seed. One day, a traveler named Ishan arrived. His eyes were heavy with regret. Mira gave him a seed and led him to an empty patch of earth. "What do you wish to plant?" she asked. He clenched his fist. "My father died before I could tell him I forgave him." He buried the seed. Days passed. Then a small sprout emerged, fragile, trembling. As it grew, Ishan visited daily. The stem twisted and turned like a voice attempting to form words. When it finally bloomed, the petals whispered, "Thank you for forgiving me." Ishan fell to his knees, tears flooding his palms. Mira approached gently. Every word we fear to speak takes root somewhere in the heart. Here, we let them breathe. Word of the garden spread. People came with burdens they had carried for decades. A woman planted the apology she owed her sister. A man planted the courage he needed to change his life. A child planted the wish to see her mother again. Each seed bloomed into a flower that whispered the words the heart had been unable to release. But not all seeds sprouted easily. One visitor, a young monk, planted a seed of self-forgiveness. For weeks, nothing grew. He asked Mira, "Why does mine remain barren?" Mira smiled softly. "Some voices are not unfinished. They are unheard." She placed her hands on the soil. "Before the seed speaks, you must listen." The monk began meditating beside the empty soil daily. One morning, a single leaf appeared, small but glowing with morning dew. As it unfurled, he heard a trembling whisper, "I forgive you. Now learn to forgive yourself." The monk wept. When Ishan prepared to leave the village, he asked Mira, "What will happen to the garden after you're gone?"
Mira looked at the sky, her eyes shining like dawn. The garden is not here. It is in every silence waiting to be spoken. Ishan understood. And for the rest of his life, he taught others to speak the words their hearts had buried before they became seeds of regret. Story: The lamp that refused to burn out. In an ancient monastery stood a hallway lined with hundreds of lamps. Every night, monks lit them to symbolize the inner light of awareness. But one lamp behaved strangely. It refused to burn out. Even when morning came and the others faded, this lamp continued to glow, soft, warm, unwavering. Monks argued about it. Is it a sign from the heavens? Is it a blessing from past masters? Is it a spirit? The abbot simply said, "Let it be." Yet novices were curious. A young monk named Taro studied the lamp nightly. He observed the flame, steady, gentle, without flicker. He checked the oil level, untouched. He replaced the wick, it burned the same. He even meditated beside it for hours, hoping the lamp would reveal its secret. One night, the abbot approached him. "You seek too hard." "Master," Taro replied, "this lamp breaks all rules. It should not burn without fuel." The abbot chuckled. "Just because something breaks your rules doesn't mean it breaks nature's." He placed his hand near the flame. "Taro, why do you meditate?" "To find peace, Master." "And why do you struggle?" "Because peace doesn't stay." The abbot nodded. "That is the lamp's lesson." Taro frowned. "I don't understand." The abbot explained. Most minds are like lamps that rely on fuel. Praise, success, validation, comfort. When those run out, their light fades. But a mind trained in awareness burns from within. Its flame is self-sustaining. He pointed to the lamp. This lamp is not magic. It is a reminder. Taro spent months meditating with the lamp as his companion. Slowly his breath softened, his mind quieted. Even when frustrations came, his inner flame dimmed but never died. One morning he noticed something new. The eternal lamp had finally gone out. Alarmed, he rushed to the abbot. "Master, the lamp!" The abbot raised a hand. "Taro, you no longer need it." The young monk realized the flame had moved inside him. And from that day forward, Taro became known as the monk whose presence warmed others, a living lamp that never burned out.
Story: The Forest of Second Beginnings. Far away from any village lay a forest hidden by fog. Locals called it the Forest of Second Beginnings. They believed it appeared only to those who had lost their path in life. One cold evening, a woman named Ira wandered into the forest after fleeing a future she feared and a past she could not escape. She had lost her job, her partner, and her confidence. She felt like her life had collapsed. Inside the forest, she found no animals, no wind, only stillness. Yet she felt watched, not by danger, but by understanding. A soft glow appeared between the trees. Ira followed it. She entered a clearing where a single enormous tree stood. Its trunk was smooth like stone, and its leaves shimmered faintly, as though holding fragments of starlight. A voice rose from the tree. What have you lost? Ira trembled. My direction, my worth, my place in the world. The tree's leaves rustled. Then you have not lost anything. You are simply standing at the doorway of beginning again. Iris sank to her knees. How do I begin when everything is gone? The tree replied, a second beginning is not born from success. It is born from honesty. Suddenly, the forest changed. Thousands of small lights floated upward, like memories awakening. Each light showed a different version of herself. The child who dreamed, the teenager who dared, the adult who loved fiercely, the woman who survived heartbreak, the one who kept going despite everything. Then a final light appeared, dim, trembling, but alive. It was the Ira of now, fragile, hurting, but still breathing. The tree whispered, do not underestimate the strength of one who continues despite having every reason to stop. Ira cried, not from weakness, but release. The forest began to brighten, fog lifting like curtains parting at dawn. A new path formed ahead of her, made of soft moss that glowed beneath her feet. Where does this path lead? She asked. The tree answered simply, forward. For the first time in years, Ira felt a spark, small, fragile, but unmistakably hers, the beginning of a new chapter. As she stepped onto the glowing path, the forest slowly vanished behind her, leaving only one truth in her heart. Every ending is just a beginning that needed time to find its courage. Story: The Keeper of the Wind Lantern. On the mist-covered side of a lonely mountain lived an old woman named Lei. She lived alone in a wooden hut, with no children, no remaining family, and no visitors, except the wind that passed by her home each dawn and dusk. Her only companion was a strange lantern, the wind lantern. It needed no oil, it needed no candle. It glowed whenever the wind touched it, and even when the wind fell silent, the light continued shimmering for a moment before slowly fading, as if the lantern held on to the memory of movement. Villagers whispered many stories about it. Some said the lantern held the spirit of Lei's late husband, a humble carpenter who worked quietly and loved even more quietly. One freezing winter night, a weary traveler knocked on Lei's door. Lost and shivering, he asked for a place to stay. She welcomed him with warm tea and a quiet smile. The traveler noticed the lantern immediately. Why does it shine when the wind blows? And why does it keep glowing even after the wind stops? He asked. Lei looked at him with eyes as calm as moonlight. It does not shine because of the wind, she said softly. It shines because of what the wind carries. The traveler frowned. I don't understand. Lei placed the lantern in her lap. She said, many things pass through our lives. A hug, a word of love, a moment of forgiveness, a tear of understanding. They come and go like the wind, yet they leave a brightness inside us. She touched the lantern gently. This light comes from memories held with gratitude. That night, the traveler could not sleep. He listened to the wind sliding across the roof, and something shifted inside him. For years, he had chased ambition, success, approval, but he had never stayed long enough with any moment to truly feel grateful. He suddenly understood
why his heart always felt so empty. In the morning, as he prepared to leave, the lantern glowed softly, even though the wind had stopped. And the traveler thought, some lights do not fade. We simply forget how to see them.
Story: The Lake Without Reflections. Deep inside an old forest lay a mysterious lake. Its water was clear enough to see the pebbles at the bottom, yet it had one strange quality. It reflected nothing. No face, no sky, not even the moon at night. People called it the lake without reflections. One day, a young monk named Lam arrived during his pilgrimage. Curious, he knelt to look into the water and was shocked to find no trace of himself. No face stared back. Fear surged through him. Do I not exist? A gentle voice rose from the still water. You fear because you believe there is a fixed self to protect. Lam stiffened. Who is speaking? The lake, the voice answered. The lake shows truth rather than form. What you call yourself is not a single image, it is movement. Lam sat in silence, confused. The voice continued. When you are sad, you are one person. When you are joyful, another. When you love, when you hate. When you remember, when you let go. You change with every breath. The lake rippled softly. A reflection shows only one version of you. That is why there is none here. You are not a shape. You are a flow. Slowly, Lam closed his eyes and felt his breath, rising, falling, changing. He realized he had never stayed the same even for a moment. Every inhale was a birth, every exhale a letting go. When he opened his eyes, the lake still reflected nothing. But now he smiled. No reflection means I can choose who I become. And with that, he continued his journey with a lighter heart. Story: The Last Dewdrop on the Lotus Leaf. Before sunrise, when the world was still holding its breath, a single dewdrop rested on the largest lotus leaf in the pond. It trembled slightly, knowing the sun would soon rise and it would disappear. It whispered sadly, "Why is my life so short?" A white crane, standing near the pond, looked down at the tiny dewdrop and smiled. "Little one, why do you think your life is only this moment?" The dewdrop replied weakly, "Because I will disappear as soon as the sun touches me." The crane lowered its beak gently. "Have you ever looked at yourself?" The dewdrop said, "I only see myself trembling." The crane shook its head. "No. When I look at you, I see the entire night sky reflected inside you. The moon, the stars, the passing wind, the quiet scent of the lotus. You are small, yes, but you hold the whole universe." The dewdrop felt warmth for the first time. As the sun rose, the dewdrop began to melt. But it no longer trembled with fear. It shimmered with gratitude. Just before dissolving into the morning air, it whispered, "So, this is not the end. It is a return." And the sunlight over the pond glowed a little brighter.
as if the dewdrop's essence remained in the air. Story: The Road with No Way Out. In a quiet village, there was a strange path people called the Road with No Way Out. Anyone who walked down it would end up exactly where they started, no matter how far they traveled. One day, a young man overwhelmed by disappointment, tired of failing, tired of pretending he was fine, entered the path to see if the rumors were true. He walked for hours. Straight, left, right, it didn't matter. He always returned to the same old banyan tree at the entrance. Finally, in frustration, he shouted, "Why do I keep coming back here?" An old man appeared, leaning on a wooden cane. He said, "Because this road does not take you anywhere. It simply brings you back to yourself." The young man froze. The old man continued, "Until you understand where you want to go, every road becomes a dead end. It is not the path that lacks an exit. It is you who lack direction." The man sat on the dusty ground and realized he had been running for years, from pain, from expectations, from himself, but never toward something he truly desired. He whispered, "What do I really want?" That simple question unstuck something inside him. When he finally walked off the road, he was no longer lost. He had found the beginning within himself.
Story: The House That Breathed. In a remote valley stood an old abandoned home that villagers called the House That Breathed. At night, its walls seemed to rise and fall like lungs, inhaling, exhaling, alive. Most people stayed far away, afraid of the stories. One stormy evening, a young woman named Sam arrived at the house seeking shelter. She had been wandering for days, trying and failing to run away from the heartbreak that had shattered her life. The moment Sam closed the door behind her, she felt it, a slow, gentle rhythm. The house was breathing. Not wildly, not frighteningly, just calmly, like someone sleeping peacefully. A deep voice emerged from the wooden walls. "What are you trying to run from, child?" Sam's heart throbbed. "I just want to forget." The house exhaled softly. "Forgetting does not heal. Facing does." Sam fell to her knees, sobbing, "But it hurts too much." The house gently expanded, as if offering her an embrace. "Hurt is also a part of breath," it whispered. "When you breathe in, you receive. When you breathe out, you release." Sam began breathing with the house, slowly, deeply, trembling at first, then steadier, warmer. Each breath carried away a little of her grief. That night, she slept in the cradle of the breathing walls, held like a child returning home. When she awoke at dawn, the house was silent, still, ordinary. But she felt different. Just before leaving, she heard a final whisper. "You do not need me to find peace. You carry the breath of healing within you." With a gentle smile, Sam stepped out into the morning light, lighter, clearer, alive again. Story: The Gatekeeper of Silence.
In a small village at the foot of a quiet mountain, there lived a man whose only job was to guard a gate. But the gate led nowhere, just an old wooden frame standing in the middle of a dusty path. Still, every morning he swept the leaves around it, adjusted the hinges, and sat beside it as if guarding a treasure. People laughed at him. "What are you guarding that for? It doesn't block anything." He only smiled. One day, a young man who was burdened with confusion and inner noise approached the gatekeeper. "Sir, what does this gate mean?" The old man brushed his fingers along the wooden frame. "This gate doesn't keep anyone out. It simply reminds us that before we walk into any place within our own mind, we should pause for a moment, breathe, and ask, 'What am I carrying with me?'" He added, "What weighs us down has never been the world outside, but the unnoticed things we drag along within." The young man fell silent. He suddenly realized there was a gate within his own heart, one he had walked through countless times without awareness. From that day, he returned every morning, standing before the wooden gate beside the old man, not to guard anything, but to learn how to observe himself before taking another step.
Story: The flower that did not bloom in season. In the garden behind the old monastery, there was a strange flower that had refused to bloom for years. Every day, villagers came to look at it, shaking their heads. Something must be wrong with it. Maybe the soil is poor. Maybe the weather isn't right. But the old monk only smiled. Not everything blooms in the season humans prefer. A young novice once asked, "Then when will it bloom, master?" The monk replied gently, "When it stops trying to be anything other than what it is." The novice didn't fully understand, but he watered the plant faithfully. One night, he sat beside the flower longer than usual. He whispered, "I don't know who I am either. I try to be better, kinder, and exactly what everyone expects, but the more I try, the more lost I feel." The night wind moved softly, and at that very moment, the flower bud quietly cracked open. The next morning, the entire garden gasped. The blossom had finally bloomed, not brilliantly, but with a serene, untouched purity. The old monk smiled. Every soul is a flower. It blooms only when it is allowed to be itself. Story: The lamp on the table and the darkness inside us. A student came to his master distressed. "The more I practice, the more darkness I see inside myself. Anger, fear, selfish desires. I thought practice would make me brighter." The master said nothing. Instead, he lit a small oil lamp and placed it on the table. "Look carefully." As the flame grew brighter, the shadow at the student's feet became sharper and longer. The master said, "The brighter the light, the clearer the darkness. Not because you have become worse, but because you are now awake enough to see what you once avoided." The master blew out the lamp. The room fell into stillness. When you can no longer see the darkness, it isn't because it's gone, but because you've fallen entirely into it.
The student lowered his head, tears touching his hands. "Master, then what should I do with my darkness?" The master replied softly, "Walk with it. Do not hate it. Do not exile it. Do not try to erase it. Just carry your own lamp as you continue on the path."
Story: The Sound of a Broken Cup. In the kitchen of a small house by the forest, there was an old ceramic cup that had been cracked for years. Its owner always handled it gently, though friends often told him to throw it away. One day, the cup finally broke. When the pieces hit the floor, the owner sat silently for a long time. His friend asked, "Are you this sad because you missed the cup?" He shook his head. "I don't grieve for the cup. I grieve for the moment I realized nothing stays with us forever." He gathered the shards, washed them carefully, and placed them inside a wooden box. "I keep it to remind myself everything I treasure in this life is only borrowed. Nothing truly belongs to me, not even for a moment." From that day on, he treated everything, people, objects, moments, with a new kind of tenderness, gentle, mindful, and without attachment. Story: The Boat That Carried No One. At dusk, a wandering practitioner walked along a quiet riverside. He noticed an old wooden boat drifting freely on the water. No rope, no oars, no one inside. He remembered all the times he had grown angry because he believed someone had collided with his life, hurt him, or stolen his peace. But watching the empty boat drift, he suddenly understood. Many things that hurt us have nothing to do with us. They are just currents of life passing by. The wind softened, the river stilled. He sat down and exhaled, not with sorrow, not with joy, but with the breath of someone who had finally put down a burden. From then on, whenever someone upset him, he would silently ask, "Is this boat occupied, or is it simply drifting?" And most of the time, the answer was clear. It was empty. Story: The Man Who Sowed the Sky. In a distant valley, there lived a man who climbed the highest hill every night. He carried silver thread and a needle long as a moonbeam. Villagers whispered that he was mending the sky. They mocked him, calling him mad. One day, a curious little girl followed him up the hill. She asked, "What are you sewing? The sky can't tear, can it?" The man looked at her and smiled gently. "I'm not sewing the sky. I'm sewing the torn places inside myself. But if I imagine it is the sky, the healing hurts less." The girl sat beside him, watching as he placed shimmering stitches into the darkness above. She asked, "When will you be healed?" He answered softly, "When I no longer feel the need to sew anything." Story: The Morning Bell Keeper. At the peak of a mountain stood an old bronze bell. Every dawn, an elderly woman climbed up to strike it once.
a single pure sound ringing across the valley. A traveler once asked, "What's the purpose of this bell? It doesn't call anyone." The old woman replied, "It awakens what people have forgotten inside themselves." The traveler frowned. "But you never see anyone change, do you?" She smiled. "I don't need to. I only send out the sound. Whether anyone awakens is a matter of their own heart." The traveler said nothing after that. But on his way down the mountain, he realized that the bell had not changed the world. It had changed him. Story: The Leaf Writer. In the depths of the forest, an old man sat beneath a tall tree, writing on fallen leaves with the tip of his fingernail. When the wind blew, the leaves drifted away. A traveler asked, "What are you writing? Who will read it?" The old man replied, "I write the things I never dared to say. I don't write for others to read. I write so that I can finally hear myself." The traveler grew quiet. The old man continued, "When the leaf falls, my words no longer cling to me. The wind carries them away, light as a sadness released." The traveler picked up a leaf at his feet. On it, in delicate scratches, were two words: "Forgive me." Story: The Stream That Did Not Flow Downward. There was a strange stream. It didn't flow down the mountain like all others. Instead, it seemed to flow upward. Villagers thought it was a miracle or a mistake of nature. A young monk traveled to the mountain, hoping to find meaning in it. He asked the abbot, "Why does the stream flow upward? Does it symbolize something?" The abbot smiled. "It isn't flowing upward. You are only accustomed to seeing the world move downward." The monk blinked in confusion. The abbot continued, "When your mind is fixed in one direction, anything that goes the other way feels strange. But the strangeness isn't in the stream. It is in your mind." The monk stood by the water, and for the first time in his life, he realized he had rarely looked at the world with fresh eyes. Story: The Room Without Windows. In an old monastery, there was a room completely dark. No windows, no crack of light. Everyone feared entering it. Only a young monk enjoyed sitting inside. One day, his friend asked, "How can you sit in such darkness? Aren't you afraid?" The monk replied, "Humans are not afraid of the dark. They are afraid of the things the dark forces them to see." His friend frowned. "But there's nothing to see in that loom." He placed a hand on his own chest. "Not in the loom, but in what you bring into it." That night, the friend tried entering the room himself. At first, he trembled, but after sitting long enough, he began hearing what he had avoided all his life: his anxious heartbeat, his tight breath, fears without names. When he stepped out, his face was wet with tears. The young monk said, "There is no darkness more frightening than the parts of ourselves we have not yet faced."
Story: The Man Who Collected Sunlight. In an ancient forest, there lived an old man who spent every late afternoon gathering the last fallen patches of sunlight. He bent down, cupped his hands, and gently placed each fragment of light
into a small glass jar. People laughed at him. "How can you keep sunlight?" He didn't answer. He simply continued collecting. A curious boy once asked, "Why do you gather them?" The old man smiled. "I'm not keeping the sunlight. I'm keeping the habit of noticing it." The boy stared at the shimmering jar. The old man added, "Every day, light falls right before our eyes, yet people are always chasing the shadows inside their minds." That day, for the first time, the boy realized he had spent his whole life staring at things that made him sad, while the light had never left. Story: The Cloud Shepherd. On a windy hilltop lived a man whose only task each evening was to guide drifting clouds closer together. Whenever someone asked why, he laughed. "Clouds drift by themselves. Why bother gathering them?" He answered calmly, "I'm not gathering clouds. I'm keeping them from colliding and turning into a storm." A traveler questioned him, "Do clouds resemble the human mind?" The shepherd nodded. "When too many thoughts scatter in too many directions, they crash into each other and create storms. Bring them back to one place, and the storm dissolves." The traveler asked softly, "And where do we gather them?" The cloud shepherd pointed to his chest. "Here, in a single breath." Story: The Marker Without Numbers. In the middle of an empty field stood a strange milestone, smooth, blank, with no words or numbers. Villagers said it was useless. One day, a young woman who felt lost in her life came to the milestone and sat against it. She asked an old farmer nearby, "What is this thing?" He replied, "It's a marker to remind us where we're standing." She sighed, "But it doesn't show anything." He smiled gently. "It doesn't need to. If you pause long enough beside it, you'll know exactly where you are in your own life." The woman remained there for a long time, and for the first time in years, she saw clearly how far she had wandered away from herself. The marker did not give directions, it gave space to see.
Story: The Man Who Polished the Silent Stone. Beside a quiet river lived a man who spent his whole life polishing a single stone. It was small, gray, and unnoticed by anyone else. People asked, "Why devote your life to one stone?" He replied, "I once wanted to change the whole world, and then realized I couldn't. So I chose to change the smallest thing within my reach." They laughed. "What's the point of changing a stone?" He said, "Whenever I touch it each day, I see my own mind in it, impatient one day, peaceful the next. The stone barely changes, but I do." By the end of his life, the stone was still a stone, but the man had become the gentlest soul by the river. Story: The Lamp That Would Not Light. In a quiet monastery stood a peculiar oil lamp. No matter how they tried, it never lit. Everyone dismissed it as broken. Yet a young monk enjoyed sitting beside it every night. Another monk asked, "Why do you sit by a lamp that doesn't work?" The young monk replied, "Because it reveals more about me than any lamp that shines." The other monk was puzzled. How can a lamp without light teach you anything? He smiled. Because when no outer light is available, you are forced to look with the light inside yourself. The other monk tried sitting beside the dark lamp as well, and soon he discovered the truest light never comes from flame, but from awakening. Story: The Nighttime Mender. In a quiet village, there lived a man who earned a living mending torn curtains. What puzzled everyone was that he worked only at night. People often asked, "Why not repair them during the day when you can see clearly?" He replied, "During the day, everyone notices the tears in their curtains, but at night, only those who truly wish to heal what is broken come to me." One evening, a young woman brought him a curtain so worn and frayed that it could not block even the gentlest wind. She said softly, "This curtain has hung in my window for years. It can no longer protect my home." He examined it and said, "It's not the curtain that is torn. It's your heart that is full of wind." She fell silent as he carefully stitched each delicate thread. Only when she returned home, hanging the curtain back in its place, did she understand. The room had never been noisy because of the wind. It was her own unrest, echoing through everything she touched. From that night on, she learned that some tears do not lie in objects, but in the one who looks at them. Story: The Upstream River. There existed a peculiar river that always flowed against the wind. Locals called it the River of Paradox. A traveler passing through asked the ferryman, "Why does this river flow backwards?" The ferryman smiled gently. "The river simply goes where it wishes to go. Only humans believe they must follow the wind." The traveler sat at the tip of the boat, watching the transparent water push bravely against the breeze. The ferryman added, "Some people spend their entire lives being blown in directions chosen by others, and some, like this river, follow the direction their own heart calls." The traveler remained quiet for a long time, then whispered, "Perhaps I have let others steer my life for too long." And from that day forward, he changed direction. Story: The Nameless Garden. In a valley rested a beautiful garden where the caretaker had never given names to any of the flowers. Whenever visitors asked why, he would answer, "If I give them names, you will see them through memory, not through your eyes." One day, a young child asked, "But without names, how do we know what they are?" The caretaker knelt down and replied softly, "When you love a flower, do you love its name or the flower itself?" The child paused, confused. He continued, "Names give us the illusion that we understand something, but anything that lives and changes has never had a fixed name." The child looked at the flowers again, this time without labeling them in his mind. And strangely, the garden felt much larger, no longer confined by concepts or categories. Story: The Keeper of the Broken Lighthouse. On a desolate coast stood an old lighthouse,
its great lamp shattered long ago. Yet, the keeper still climbed to the top each night to light the wick. Sailors called him mad. "The lamp no longer shines. Why keep lighting it?" He smiled softly. "Light can break, but responsibility does not." A young sailor asked, "But if the lamp gives no light, what is the point?" The keeper pointed to his own feet. "To remind myself that I once guided others safely." Some lights remain not to illuminate the sea, but to keep the keeper from forgetting who he is. Years later, the young sailor would inherit the lighthouse. And he tended it faithfully, not because it shone, but because some lights are meant to be remembered, not seen. Story: The Reflecting Vessel. An old peddler wandered from town to town carrying a tarnished bronze vessel. He told everyone, "This vessel holds no water, only truth." When people looked into it, they saw only their own faces. Disappointed, they complained, "There is nothing special about this." The old man chuckled. "People always want to see something new, except themselves." One day, a young man peered into the vessel and grew frustrated. "Why do I look so tired?" The old peddler placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Because you have not paused long enough to notice it. The vessel does not make your face weary. It only returns to you what you have carried for years." That night, the young man sat alone for a very long time, and for the first time, he faced the truth he had avoided.
Story: The man who wrote letters to what had not yet come. In a small village at the foot of a mountain, there lived an old man with a strange occupation. Each day, he wrote letters addressed to things that had not yet happened. People found him odd, and children often followed him around, curious to see what he wrote in his thick, time-worn notebook. One day, a young man, someone who lived constantly in fear of the future, decided to visit him. "Sir," he asked, "why do you write letters to the future? No one reads them." The old man smiled gently. "No one needs to read them. I write so that I may understand my own heart before tomorrow arrives." He handed the young man an unsealed letter. In it were these words: "To tomorrow. If you arrive with storms, I will still open the door for you. If you come with warm sunlight, I will remember to be grateful. And if you come when I'm unprepared, then I will learn to stand steady as you unfold." The young man fell silent. The old man continued, "People suffer not because the future is bad, but because they enter it with a heart they never took time to tidy." The young man bowed his head. "I fear tomorrow. I have never thought of speaking with it." The old man placed a pen in his hand. "Write a letter, not to predict the future, but to acknowledge what is happening inside you today." The young man sat down and wrote slowly. Tears fell without him realizing. When he folded the letter, half the burden on his chest had lifted. The old man whispered, "The future is not frightening. What is frightening is walking into it with a heart you have abandoned." From that day on,
People often saw the young man sitting at the old man's house each afternoon, writing more letters, not to send to anyone, only to send to the version of himself who would wake up tomorrow. Story: The Temple Without a Master. On a quiet hilltop stood an ancient temple. No Buddhist statue, no inscriptions, no monks residing within. People called it the temple without a master. A man burdened with old wounds came seeking guidance, hoping to find teachings that could calm his heart. But when he stepped inside, he found nothing but an empty chamber. He sat down, disappointed. He said, "I came to find a teacher, but there is no one here to teach me." The wind passed through the wooden frame, shaking an old wind chime that hung outside the doorway. Its soft sound echoed through the empty hall. In the silence that followed, he heard a voice that belonged to no one but himself. "You have asked so many people for answers, yet you have never asked yourself." He started, looked around. Still only the bare, empty room. He closed his eyes. Memories surfaced, moments when he blamed others, fled from pain, avoided truths he didn't wish to face. A second voice rose within him. "The teacher you avoid the most is not out there, it is inside you." He exhaled deeply, as though dropping a heavy load he had carried for years. When he opened his eyes, he noticed a faint line of writing etched on the wall, almost erased with age. "When you are quiet enough, every place becomes a temple. When you are honest enough, every pain becomes a teacher." Tears filled his eyes, not from sorrow, but from the realization that the pain he had always resisted was the greatest teacher he had never welcomed. He left the empty temple feeling lighter than he had in years. No one there had taught him anything, yet he had learned more deeply than from any scripture or conversation before. And from that day onward, he understood: a temple needs no master, for the true master is the one we forget to seek, the one living within ourselves. As we walk through each story, we begin to see that the world is not shaped only by great events, but by the smallest moments. A gentle breath, an honest look, a quiet pause long enough to hear the voice within. The characters in these tales are not perfect, nor are they enlightened beings untouched by suffering. They are simply ordinary people who stepped through confusion, passed through pain, and eventually found their way back home, to themselves. And perhaps that is our journey as well. No path is the same, no lesson unfolds in the same way, yet all roads lead us toward one place, the awakening of the heart. If you feel lost, pause for a moment. If you feel hurt, place your hand over your chest and breathe deeply. If you feel afraid, remember that you are not walking alone. These stories are not meant to give you answers, but to open a small doorway within you. The rest you will walk through in your own time. May you discover peace, not at the end of the path, but in the very step you are taking now.